we're going to get to a couple of the games here. Let's start off with the game, one we've been talking about quite a bit already, Ohio State versus Michigan. This one is in Ann Arbor. Michigan has beaten Ohio State 4 consecutive years. Earlier on this season, Cole, it felt like you had every reason to believe Ohio State would change the narrative this year. It just looked like a juggernaut, and Michigan was struggling to ultimately survive a lot of different games. And it's not to say that Michigan has gotten into a position where they're absolutely rolling at this point, but I think Bryce Underwood, now with basically a full season under his belt, knows what he is. The team knows what his strengths and weaknesses are. They're working around it. Even losing Justice Haynes, they keep on moving. They found a few more options in the passing game. This is still closer to a service academy offense, and that they're going to run the ball. Time of possession, field position are going to be important. They need to stay on schedule. They need to be ahead in the score. If they need to make up multiple scores, it's really difficult for Michigan to come back. Ohio State, for me, man, watching them against Rutgers, granted, they won that game 42-9, but it was 14-3 at halftime. Julian Sand finished the game 13 of 19 for less than 200 yards passing, 1 passing touchdown. He was without the 2 aliens known as Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate, who were both out due to injury. And it remains to be seen if both of them are going to be a full go this weekend. I don't know if you have any different information on that, but I would assume, considering the gravity of the game, that both Tate and Jeremiah would give it a go this week.
They're going to play. They may be limited, but they will play. You know that.
Right. So Julian Sand in that passing game looked limited, to use your word, against Rutgers for most of that game. Max Clare was the primary target. He had 7 catches in that game. Brandon Innes, who has been banged up a little bit this year, they tried to get him involved, but he really didn't do much in the passing game. So it just kind of made you wonder about this Ohio State team if you don't have Jeremiah and Tate doing their thing. What's your perspective on this game? Do you think Michigan makes it 5 in a row?
They could. I mean, let's just call it as is, dude. Until proven otherwise, Michigan has a shot in this game because they've owned this game. That has just been the bottom line. They've been really good on third down. They started finding an identity offensively last week. The 25-point win against Maryland was the best win of the year for Michigan in terms of point differentials. And they're winning in more ways than just trusting the militant ground and pound attack. They're able to get the ball out in space. They're able to make plays with the wide receivers. Tight end play has been really phenomenal at this point. And defensively, they're forcing a lot of minimal contact after yards gained. So those are things that Michigan can do really well. And the game is in Ann Arbor. So it's like another thing that you get to have in your back pocket of, listen, they come into our house. We're fighting for a college football playoff berth. We know how good we've been offensively as of late. And we know that right now we are hitting our stride at the right time. It reminds me a lot of like Notre Dame last season when they started to figure out what their identity was on both sides of the ball. And at that point, the only thing that was standing in their way of winning was themselves, and they didn't get in their way. They were able to capitalize defensively. They were able to force a lot of turnovers. So if Michigan can play physical at the line of scrimmage, especially when it's going up against the wide receivers, Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate, and kind of force Julian Sand to have that epiphany moment of what it takes to truly win at the highest level in the Big Ten, they absolutely can win this football game. On the flip side, though, what I look at is this will be the first time really all season where it does feel like for Julian Sand, you have to have that it moment. Mm-hmm. And you had 12 games to prepare for this one game. You and I both understand the world of college football. There is a 12-game season that has already been played for both of the, I mean, there's an 11-game season that's already been played for both these squads. There's a 1-game season on the horizon. It's 60 minutes. This is what you prepare for all year long. And there's fans who will be frustrated, dismayed, beyond angered, especially on the Ohio State side, if you do not find a way to win. Because as much as they care about winning the national title, they love to beat Michigan. Like, I'm an SEC dude, and I'll be completely real. I think the best rivalry in college football is probably the game. It just is. Now, I'm not Joel Klatt. I'm not going to say it's not in the same stratosphere as the game, because that would be ridiculous. But this is the best game because it's the most iconic game between two brands that constantly find themselves in the race for the college football playoff. When I look at Ohio State, do you have something in store for Ryan Day and Brian Hartline that you haven't unveiled just yet? Because that's a really interesting pinpoint of, you can study the tape all you want. A team like Ohio State usually should have something saved for a team like Michigan, just to throw them off their beaten path. In a year where you haven't won against this team in 5 seasons where Michigan won a national title for beating you. Michigan went to the college football playoff back-to-back years for beating you. Michigan went to their top. Michigan went to their top pass stack. Like, I want to see them be able to be a balanced approach to something that we have yet to unveil up to this point in the season.
The thing for me is, to your point, Julian Sayin had 3 consecutive 300-plus yard passing games, 9 touchdowns in those games. And then his guys, 4 and 17, were unavailable, and all of a sudden he looked human. So I don't want to hear the Julian Sayin for Heisman conversation anymore. He's maybe the 6th or 7th best player on his team. Forgive me for using the stupid 6-7 stuff. I'll say 8th or 9th, whatever. Like, there's a bunch of guys on that Ohio State team that are better than Julian Sayin. So I don't think he should be getting the Heisman this year. That being said, he's somehow still in the running. If this game is put on Julian Sayin and Tate and Smith are somehow limited, there's going to be a real problem for Ohio State, I think, because they are not the dominant rushing threat that they were last year. And also, we all remember last year, Ryan Day, with Chip Kelly as the offensive coordinator, were attempting to make some sort of statement that they too could be as physical as Michigan, and Michigan just popped them right back in the mouth. I think Michigan is prepared to do that again this year, but if Sayin and the passing game are potent enough, I don't think this Michigan secondary can hang with Jeremiah Smith, Carnell Tate, Max Clare, Brandon Ennis. The list goes on and on of all the threats they can put out there. Frankly, I think the only secondaries in the country that can hang with the Ohio State passing game are Ohio State's own secondary and maybe Oregon's. And like, that feels like a bit of a stretch to me, Cole. Looking at these coaches, one, do you think Ryan Day will make the same mistake he made philosophically last year? And if Michigan were to lose this game badly, what's the outcome for Sharon Moore?
Hey, I'll get right back to the video, but first I do want to tell you about our friends over at Sleeper. Make sure that you are on the Sleeper app. We appreciate all of their support this football season. Use our code CFA for a 100% match up to $100. We will play the more or less game on Wednesday on the Power 2 live here on the channel. So make sure you're subscribed and don't miss it. Make sure that you've already deposited and you're already good to go. While you're doing holiday shopping for everybody else, make sure you're on the Sleeper app taking care of yourself too. Check their terms and conditions because terms of use do apply. We appreciate Sleeper for their support.
Nothing for Sharon Moore. I will say this, and I will push back a little bit. They only ran it 26 times last year compared to 33 pass attempts. So they did throw it more than they ran it. The problem was they realized that the rushing attack wasn't working, and they still went back to the well. That was where there was the really big
late too, very late.
Yeah. So that was where the difference was in the game, is that they tried when you knew that you probably need to be in pass situations, you decided to run it. And that was the physical approach. But to be fair, they did throw it more than they ran it last year. I think for Sharon Moore, it means nothing. You're going to be guaranteed another year. You kind of have to be guaranteed another year because part of the reason why this staff is in place and you have a good up-and-coming recruiting class and it's an easy selling point of Bryce Underwood getting a lot of pieces built around him is because Sharon Moore was able to get the job done and bring in the right personnel to put Bryce Underwood in a position where he could be successful. So he won't be fired. He'll be scrutinized going into his 3rd season. That's for dang sure. But it won't be at the point of, I mean, you look at this Michigan team, most of us said 8-4. Guarantee that doesn't happen. You will at least be 9-3, if not 10-2 in the college football playoff hunt. So that again shows that he is, I think, the right guy for the job. You're just missing some elements to it. This is, in my opinion, also going to be a Bryce Underwood game. Like, as much as we talk about Julian saying this has to be Bryce Underwood, because what do we know about Michigan? They're a top 12 rushing offense in the country. They love to run the football, and they have designed runs with 19. You're going up against a top 10 run defense. I mean, we do not give enough respect, I think, for how well the run defense has been for Ohio State this year when the passing of defense has been elite because of what you got in the back end and the back 7. So this will be a Bryce Underwood game. How quickly can you develop a rapport in the passing attack? Can you win on 3rd down? I'm going to be looking at the stat line of both tight ends because if these young quarterbacks want to have a security blanket, the tight end is a security blanket. Who finishes with more targets? Who finishes with more catches? Who finishes with more receptions? Whichever one does that, I feel like they're going to be the one to end up winning the football game. And I think that special teams may be a very, very, very underrated part of this matchup simply because you want to get in field goal range. 3 points can be the difference between going home with an undefeated season or being in the college football playoff hunt.
According to Vegas, Ohio State is favored by 9.5, over under 43.5 at the time of this show. Our good buddy TJ Pittenger has already sent in his picks for this weekend. TJ is taking Ohio State 24-21. That range feels good. What do you think?
That's right. I mean, that's where I take the range. What are you going with?
I do think Michigan covers, but I think Ohio State, if you have Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate not as limited as they have been the last few weeks, like just doing enough to get by in this thing, you should be all right. It's supposed to be kind of cold, nasty conditions in Ann Arbor, as you would expect this time of year, but I still favor Ohio State. I think it's going to be pretty narrow. I'm going to say 23-20.
I got to see it. I got to see them do it.
Yeah.
In Ann Arbor, you're fighting for the college football playoff. You found your identity last week. Michigan 23, Ohio State 21.
I'm excited to see this one. I really do think this is a coin flip game. Like, it really is that close.
Do you keep Michigan out of the college football playoff if they beat the number one team in the country?
I don't think you can. With 2 losses and you beat the number one team, like if Tate and Smith are playing, and if it's like they're playing and there's no sign that they're like really hampered by injury or something like that, then yeah, you have to put them in. If one of them plays, if neither of them play, like the expectation right now, I believe, is that Tate and Smith are going to give it a go. But they've been sitting Tate the last handful of weeks. Smith was on the sideline last week against Rutgers, but he looked hobbled. So I think that's a big question mark, but this is still an Ohio State team that can kill you from a lot of different directions.
I believe personally you will be left out if you beat the number one team in the country unless there is chaos. What I will say is if you beat the number one team in the country, you now have the best argument of all the 10-2 teams that currently are on the outside looking in.